You're tuning into Ready, Set, Reset, where our goal is to help listeners reset their outlook by providing a closer look into behavioral and mental health in our youth. We visit with a range of professionals across the field to get their input and insight on what's really going on. Our first series kicks off with the Student Mental Health Chronicles, which features school counselors from across Texas, from public to private. This podcast is for educational and motivational purposes only and is not a substitute for professional training or personal therapy. Hello, and welcome to the Ready, Set, Reset podcast. I'm your host, Ciara O'Neill, licensed professional counselor and founder of Reset IOP. With me is my co-host, Mrs. Penny Haight, licensed professional counselor, supervisor, and owner of Counseling by Penny and Associates.
Hi, I'm Penny. I'm a former school counselor of 9 years. You are tuning in to an episode of an inspiring podcast that spotlights school counselors and the incredible work they do day in and day out with students. The content you will hear on this podcast is focused on the struggles in schools related to mental health of youth. We will be providing weekly insights, resources, and solutions to address the growing and ongoing issues that will support other school counselors, parents, teachers, and students.
All right, so our guest today is school counselor Miss Catrina Clark, here with us today from Comal ISD. Welcome, Miss Clark. How are you feeling today?
Thank you for that introduction. I'm feeling great today. It's really awesome to be at this school counselor conference and to get to learn from other professionals in the field and just enhance my overall knowledge and information on being the best school counselor I can be.
Awesome. I love that last part, trying to be the best school counselor out there. All right, so can you tell us a bit about yourself and your experience as a school counselor, Miss Clark?
I've been a school counselor for about 11 years. I originally started off as an elementary school counselor in Great Falls, Montana. That was an interesting experience, but I definitely learned that I was not meant to be an elementary school counselor. A lot of hands, a lot of hugs, and a lot of germs. We moved to Washington, D.C., where I was a high school counselor. And then ultimately, we moved back to San Antonio, Texas. And that's where I became a high school counselor here in Texas.
Gotcha. Okay. So with going from different states, like compared to Texas and the other states, what's, I guess, the biggest drawback or difference that maybe you notice in the school districts or as a school counselor?
Washington, D.C. is very different because it's right next to the American School Counseling Association headquarters.
Mm-hmm.
So they very much follow that guidelines of ASCA per one for every 250 students. I think Texas has its own model and it tries to align with that. But of course, Texas has different legislation that goes into place on what a school counselor's role is. I'm very excited with the 80-20 though, because I think we're getting back to what a school counselor should be doing in the schools, especially in terms of students' mental health aspects.
What advice would you give to a school counselor that maybe their leadership isn't attuned to the 80-20 or the Texas model?
I think data and advocacy is really important. If you can show the data that the less time a counselor spends with classroom guidance or small groups or individual counseling, that sometimes discipline and failing grades, all those things increase. So it's not an immediate next day you can change it. It's going to be a time-consuming process where you're actually collecting the data, showing that information, because data is the way you get change to happen.
Yeah.
And so if you're able to collect that data and use that, but continue to advocate along the way, like I would like to get in the classrooms more. I would like to be able to do small groups. When I'm doing testing, that takes away from my opportunity to do this, and I'm not actually able to meet with the students. And then also to get to know your students, because you definitely can see changes in your students' behavior once you know them. And if something's happening, you can address it. But if you're not in your office or in the classrooms, you can't see those changes happening.
Exactly. Data is the secret weapon. I think that's what helped me in my situation. Whenever I was a brand new counselor, the CREST Award was just starting. We were the very first recipient of the CREST Award. But my principal sat with me and I said, I have to collect all this data. And then I think it was just super evident to her that she used title funds to get somebody to do the assessment stuff. So because we were in a very Title I school with low socioeconomic, and we started making a difference in the academics by addressing the mental health.
Definitely.
Awesome. Okay, Ms. Clark. So we're going to go ahead and jump into some questions further here with you today. So, what are some key indicators or warning signs that school counselors should be aware of when it comes to students and mental health?
I kind of touched on it earlier, but I think it's really important to get to know your students. And then if you see a dip in grades, you see a change in behavior, you see them in your office a lot more than you would typically see them, or it's a certain time of day. I can think of a student I have right now. No matter what, at 12:30, she's going to be in the counselor's office needing to talk with me. And first couple times I said, "Okay, what's going on?" Just really anxious after lunch. Okay, let's talk about that. Let's get some coping strategies. Got her back to class within 15 to 20 minutes. But then it became more consistent. And then like, what class are you in? So I went and looked at what class she's in. She's struggling in that class. And the fact that she's struggling in that one class, she doesn't want to be there because it causes more stress for her. So I think just getting to know your students and looking for those indicators. If they're usually a good grade student and their grades drop off,
Mm.
or if another students often advocate for their friends. So if a student comes in
Hmm.
and says, my friend's not being their son themselves lately,
Okay.
to call those kids in, and then just notice knowing the kids themselves. If you notice a difference in behavior, they're starting to get in fights or arguments, or someone who's a social butterfly all of a sudden is isolated. Those types of signs.
Is there anything that you could tell, like a new counselor, to help students advocate for their friends? What are some things that you'd have done to promote that?
So we did a huge classroom guidance on like you see something, say something,
Mhm.
not only to like suicide ideation or self harm, but just in general, like we wanted to create a school culture of caring, whether you know someone and they're your bestest friend in the world, or it's just a kid you pass in the hallway. If you see something and it makes you think, I wonder, then you should say something. And I know a lot of kids in high school where I'm at don't want to be the one to say something, right? Because it's scary. Like, what if some people make fun of me, or all of a sudden I'm the snitch? So we have an anonymous reporting system that kids can easily log on to on their phones or on the computer or write a note. Most of the time it's on their phone because that's anonymous.
Yeah.
And they can say, I saw Catrina Clark in the hallway. She looked upset. She was crying in the bathroom, right? And then one of us will go run down there and see, okay, is she still there? And if we don't find her, try to find her, see what's going on.
Okay, that's pretty awesome. So, that sounds like that's an app. Is that specific to y'all's district or?
I think every district has an anonymous reporting system.
Okay.
Ours is actually there's something called the launch pad. It's on the student's launch pad. So they
Okay.
can just go into where their grades are and click on anonymous reporting.
Gotcha. Okay. And as far as the reports, I imagine they go straight to the school counselors.
And it depends. It goes to the admin and the school counselors.
Okay.
Now, if a kid sees somebody vaping in the bathroom, that's an admin issue. They
Okay.
take care of the discipline. But if it's a social emotional issues, and we'll take care of it. But we talk with there's a way to close out the case and say, okay, Katrina Clark took care of this. She
Mhm.
closed it out. She met with the student, or the admin met with the student.
Okay, awesome, awesome. All right. So, as far as initiatives and activities that maybe you've implemented to enhance the overall well-being of your students, can you talk to us about some of those things?
Sure. So at my campus, the counselors implemented something called Tranquil Tuesday. So on the first Tuesday of the month, during their lunchtime, students can sign up to come in for 10 to 15 minutes, and we have an activity. So far this year, we've covered mindfulness activities, coping strategies for anxiety, which was painting. That we had these little 3x5 canvas prints, and they could paint something and listen to music. This today, Tuesday, they're doing origami. So I created a PowerPoint of how to make a simple heart, and it's just to take their mind off the stress of school, and they can come in, if they want to, they don't have to. It's nothing forced. And usually during lunchtime, once a week, we'll have a booth set up where we're promoting different things. We had kindness bracelets so kids can come up and make a bead for a friend out of
Awesome. Okay.
kindness. Um, Stickers, stress balls. I think this week what we're addressing is Black History Month, so we'll have some activities to kind of address that.
Okay.
And then I think it's just creating a school culture.
Yeah.
Like we always have dress up days for different things, and different clubs have dress up days. And just as a counseling department, we do them
Mm.
all, even though sometimes I don't want to, but we do all the dress up days just to be like we're supporting our students.
For sure.
Some other things that we've implemented. So we just started, we have counselors are in the classroom quite a bit, and teachers know that. So they're really flexible. We've started that from the beginning of this high school. So this high school opened 3 years ago,
Okay.
and they always do classroom guidance for every grade level. And I think going in there, and it's fun to see when they're like, oh, the counselor's here. They're excited, because one, they're not going to probably have a lecture or homework, but also it's going to be an interesting or fun activity.
Awesome. Okay, that's pretty amazing. So when it comes to the the Tranquil Tuesdays and the events you guys do at lunch, what's the turnout like from the kids? Like, what's the response?
It just depends. I would say painting had a huge response.
Okay.
We did creating your own little stress kit that had a good response. The Zentangles didn't have a great response. And I think maybe because kids didn't know what Zentangles were.
Mhm.
And so we should have done a better job promoting like this is a way to draw something and to kind of lose like lose the stress that you're feeling. And because I know that if I'm sitting somewhere, sometimes I doodle, it's just doodling pretty much.
Okay.
And I just think they didn't understand that piece. So it just really depends on, I think, what the activity is. It'll be interesting to go back to campus and see what the origami turnout was like.
Awesome. Okay. Awesome. Awesome. I really like those initiatives that you guys have taken. And I imagine some other school counselors out there in districts probably could definitely, take heed to those things and look at implementing them. So we think about, other things when it comes to be a school counselor, as far as distinguishing between typical child or adolescent challenges and versus more serious mental health concerns, how can school counselors or these even other staff members distinguish between the differences?
Well, I think everyone knows that throughout adolescence, there's definitely big changes that happen. Being in middle school, the changes there are a lot more hormonal. So when you see girls chit chatting with each other and then getting in arguments, that's kind of a hormonal thing. They're trying to understand themselves. And the same thing with adolescent boys. And then I think definitely in high school, there's some of the same things, but sometimes kids come in and talk about, their parents don't understand them. Well, that's part of growing up. Your parents aren't going to stand you
Yeah.
because they're a different generation. And also you're trying to establish your independence. And sometimes for parents, that's really hard to let their children establish some independence. And that's where we do some family campus connection, parenting classes, or we have nights where parents come in and we talk about the transition from 9th to 10th to 11th to 12th grade.
Mhm.
Those are, even though those are grade level changes, there's also growing up level changes that
Yes.
happen during that time.
Absolutely.
And having that open conversation with parents so that they can ask you questions like Johnny, for example, he's not doing his homework anymore. He used to be a really good student, but now he just wants to talk to his friends all the time on his cell phone. What can I do? And just offering some ideas and strategies because, especially as technology increases, how parents parented 20 years ago is a
Yeah.
lot different than now.
Yeah.
So for the parents listening, what would you say about Johnny on his phone all the time? I think that us having really good tips, out there is great.
Well, I'm an old school parent, so I would say who pays for Johnny's phone? And then if Johnny doesn't pay for his phone, I would say as a parent, you can ask for the phone back because it's not his phone, it's your phone, and limit his time on the phone. Um, and I think sometimes parents are afraid to do that because their kids will be mad, but kids will be mad, but they're going to get over it. I mean, most kids are pretty resilient in that aspect. Yes, he may be mad, he may not talk to you, but you can say you can get your phone back when I see that your F grade is no longer an F grade, or I see that you're doing what you're supposed to be doing.
Mhm. I read a book, and it's written from a counselor that was in an all girls high school, and I cannot think of the name of the book, but we'll put it in the comments. And one of the things that would say, the conversation she'd have parents say to their students would be, "I love you too much for you to allow you to be on your phone. I want you to have every opportunity that is afforded to you. So that would mean you got to get your homework done or get your F up to a passing grade."
Right.
Hmm.
And I think also another part of that question is that talking about social media, and I think that's some of the changes. Little kids, they have limited social media. You might let them watch a video or something, but as they get older, their exposure to social media increases, the apps they have access to increases.
Right.
And I think that also leads to mental health concerns. So if you see that your ever loving, happy child all of a sudden is on the phone a lot and they start acting depressed or frustrated, or they just lose any of that happiness that you normally see, then that's a time for you as an adult to say, okay, there's something going on here. Let's see if I reduce this. Because I have seen where even my own son, I took his phone away for a week and all of a sudden I had my boy back, not this disgruntled male teenager, right? So I think definitely um, modifying those things that our children are exposed to can help with the mental health.
Well, there's so much research out there about the serotonin, dopamine, whatever the other whatever the other chemical is, that games and electronics really boost that. And then when the kids get away from it, then they're doing it naturally by playing outside and being in the sun and in the green, all the things that boost those chemicals naturally.
And again, I think it takes, more from parents to engage a little bit more because I think as it goes from that elementary to junior high transition, they rely on maybe, phones and tablets as a crutch a little bit more. So as the parent, oh, I can get some stuff done, but then it gets to that time to where you said where the limits put into place to say, hey, I can take your phone because like I said, I pay the bill.
Yeah.
I've had some parents, I've told them, I can't, I turn their phone off, but they won't give me the phone. Well, change the Wi-Fi password, and then what can they do there? And then the fear of them lashing out, and being upset. But again, like you said, it's okay for them to be upset. They need to sit with those emotions and know what that's like, because then I've seen too many parents be held hostage by their kids when it comes to, if they go to the extreme of, if you take my phone, then I'm going to hurt myself.
Right.
This is my coping skill. My phone is my coping skill, but it's like there's so many other alternatives that if parents, just invest a little bit more time, as they have it, that we can be able to alleviate that a little bit more, and get them back out into, nature per se, but at least doing their homework, if nothing else.
And that's a big part of counseling too, is to check into students' self-regulation skills, because if they don't have them, then you got to help them learn to grow those self-regulation skills so that they're not hurting themselves.
Exactly. Great point. Well, all right, Miss Clark. It was a pleasure to sit down with you today. I feel like we've had a great conversation and understanding a little bit more about what you deal with day in and day out, in Comal ISD as a high school counselor. And before we close, if you had one thing to leave with our listeners, what would that be?
So I would say for anyone who's considering school counseling, it's a great field to be in. It's a lot of work, but when you actually see success on your end, then it was really life fulfilling. And also always advocate for your program, because if you don't advocate, no one will know what you need. All right. Thanks. Bye.
All right, great point. Thank you, Ms. Clark. So that's all for us today. Thanks for tuning in and taking time out of your day to listen in on mental health. And remember, sometimes all it takes is resetting your outlook. Be sure to like and subscribe to our YouTube channel, Ready, Set, Reset 1. Follow us on Instagram at ready_set_reset1 for mental health tips, laughs, and motivation. And if you know a student or have a child in the Fort Worth area that could use some additional support, visit our website at sunflowersigma.com to see if Reset IOP is right for them. You will find the resources discussed in today's podcast in the description area.